Richard Miller, and you're at Never Not Here. And please feel welcome. And you know our gig. We talk, and we're into discussions, and we're into dialogues. And so are all of you, basically. And the dialogue is words, and in the dialogue is feelings, and the dialogue is sensations, and the dialogue is energy. And the dialogue is collective consciousness, because it's just because we're talking doesn't mean all the others shut off. And so whatever's available for one seemingly human being to connect to another seemingly human being, that's our playground, and that's what we're up to experimenting with. And the world is our playground. And so today we're in Australia, and we're talking to Noel Pearce. So hello, Noel.
How you going? It's good to see you, Richard.
Thank you.
The name I'm using, the name I will be using for writing is Sam Noel Pearce. So I've got a website that's called Sam Noel Pearce. So that's really what I'm doing now as a name, as the label for who I am out there. And my children call me Sam. So
Sam it is.
Sam it is.
You know, we here on Never Not Here, but all over the world, we're talking to people, and we're construing what they're saying, and somehow we pick our friends and pick the people that we go listen to, because we semi-understand them, and somehow our backgrounds coalesce or coincide so that we feel like they're on our wavelength. And maybe the way I want to start out is just to say, okay, two people are talking, and in a sense, they're trying to duplicate that communication. I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to duplicate your communication. That's ideally, right? And then you're listening to me and trying to duplicate my communication. Of course, we could just say that, no, we have different interests, and we're trying to be right, and we're trying to convince you take my idea, and then you're saying, no, take my idea. But, you know, in a more pure way where we just don't have a lot of preconceptions that I need this guy to, do what I say. I'm just trying to figure out, and not even figure out, I'm just trying to somehow absorb that communication. And I mean, I've had a lot of recorded experience where I've talked to people, and I mean, I guess there's no way I can know that I'm really getting what they're saying. And I'm just getting my verifications to what I already believe. And
Yeah.
I don't know, is there a possibility that two human beings can actually reflect each other and say something of value to each other?
Yeah, I've often wondered about that question about do actually any people actually ever really connect? Like, do people actually ever really connect? Or are they this far away from each other all the time? And they're only working out what's actually happening for what's actually happening through the vehicle that they are at this present moment.
Right, it can be valuable because I'm going through my own mindset, but when I'm not really, maybe you have some experiences that are really fundamentally different than mine, and I probably will never get them. I don't know. And then who knows? 20 years later, I'll go, oh, is that what he was trying to say? I think I got it now, But it depends on, like me, having that experience or something, right?
That's true. That's happened to me. It's like, oh, right. That's what they said 15 years ago. Yes, I know that now. It's like it really just drops in, but it's always just hanging there as this sort of, like, I'm not quite sure about that. We'll just leave it there in the mind somewhere and let it just be without, in a sense, it's like stepping away from any judgment about anything at all. It's like just allowing whatever's coming through as life itself just to actually sit and be as it is without judging it or trying to slot it into the mental picture that most people actually have. In a pre-awakening state, right, many people have this idea of, okay, we've got a book here, and okay, I'm reading this book, and okay, I've absorbed all of this, and yeah, I've got a pretty good idea about what this person's saying here. But in actual fact, they they don't. I mean, this person here has written this book. That's an interpretation in words. Those those words are then read here through an interpretation, through an understanding of language, written in an understanding of language. How many layers have we got here already? We've got the direct experience of this, then we've got the words of this, then we've got me picking this up and taking these words and then reinterpreting these words. So you've got 4 layers there already of interpretation, when in actual fact it's like, unless it can speak directly to you as an experience, it's like nothing really happens. It's just another pie in the sky. It's just sitting up there, isn't it?
It's just so obvious with a book because a book is kind of, in a way, at least the words are fixed. You know, the meaning to me might evolve as my understanding evolves, let's say. But it's so obvious with a book because you can read a book 1 year and then in 3 years and then in 5 years, and you can get a whole different take on it. But I mean, what we're trying to do is a dialogue where we can go back and forth, and so I can kind of question you, like, what did you mean by that? I mean, let's say, probably I have a reputation for interrupting a certain amount, you know, and like maybe a lot of that has to do with when something sails over my head, you know, and somebody just says, well, any kind of a concept, they just sail it out there and say, okay, everyone jump on that concept and go for it. I said, wait a minute, you know, let's look at that concept and where does it come from, and at least acknowledge that that's there and that's not a real firm foundation. And so then I kind of tend to have this interrupting way about me, but it depends, you know. Maybe I don't flow too well with a lot of people.
I quite enjoy people interrupting sometimes. Sometimes it's like there needs to be a certain amount of time so that you actually get to the end of what you're actually trying to say. Quite often there's a background of information that needs to be laid out so you can actually get to what you actually want to say in the end. Mostly where I operate from is not with concept. I don't operate from concept. It's not something that has never made any sense. It's like it's not a direct experience of what life is actually for me. It's like the whole conceptuality of philosophy for me is, forget it. It's dry as a bone.
Lately, I've been saying, you know, like, okay, things are delivered not as a concept, and we do our best, you know, especially if somebody's kind of really plugged in and kind of centered and very clear. Maybe they're sharing from a very clear space, but then it's received. How's it received? And you can look out, and it doesn't take a genius to see how it's received, really, and it's received as a concept.
Yeah.
So often, right? And so then I'm suggesting taking responsibility for how it's received, you know, noticing that these guys aren't getting what I'm saying. So then, you know, and then just from what my preamble of can we really absorb something that's not in our own field, you know, in our own experiential field, let's call it, whatever that means. And if I can't absorb it, maybe it's not worth even saying. It just may be making more confusion, you know. When you write a book, you have to write a book because, like, you don't know who your audience is, and then you have to kind of put a lot of everything in there, and then maybe it's not appropriate for everybody.
It's getting back to the experiential field then, isn't it? What you're talking about. It's the direct transmission of the experiential. When two are connecting, what is actually happening here? What's actually happening in the relationship? Whether it's dialogue or whether it's having dinner with somebody or being lovers with somebody, what's actually really happening there? That's really your question. That's really what you're like a pigeon flying around this particular thing about communication. What is it that actually connects?
I'm wondering if we can really maybe, you know, okay, like I feel that we have a certain quality to our conversation. Like I'm not trying to convince you of anything, and somehow I don't feel you're trying to convince me. I don't feel at risk that I'm going to try to be changed. You know, I feel like however I am is okay with you. and however
Yeah.
you are, I know is okay with me. And so then we could just kind of experiment and see if somehow, maybe through silence, or not both of us silent, but somehow I can just absorb what you're saying and you can just absorb what I'm saying.
So the direct connection with the self. I suppose you could turn around and define the self. I mean, the self that's not hooked into mental conceptuality or interpretation. You see, I call it the conscious silent awareness. It's like there's a consciousness that's there when the mind is silent, when there are no words. That is the self that operates through this person here, through Sam, more than conceptuality or trying to convince somebody about any particular thing. Quite a few people are not comfortable with the fact that I don't really say very much.
I've been real lucky in some senses. One sense is my kind of a role of a questioner, and I really don't have to be bright or awakened or anything. My role is to not be very awakened, so I can ask some questions, and so then I really need no pretenses, and I think that could be a danger for people that are in front of a big crowd, and they all paid big money to get in there, and they're thinking they're going to get awakened somehow. And I don't know, I feel very always very honest and true about, like, I don't really know. I can ask questions and say, do we need that? Again, maybe I'm just taking the concept, maybe I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I'm thinking that a lot of people are can grab words and can make a place or a thing out of them. And when I get to that thing and when I get to that place, and that's all the whole. It's a quality of that humans express. That projection is a quality, right?
Yeah, well, the mind is one of the tools that we have to use. I mean, it's a very useful tool, but at the same time, quite often it sort of stuffs everything up completely because it interprets things in a way, particularly when people don't have access to conscious silent awareness, when they don't actually realize that what they are is silence. Like to actually use words effectively is to know silence effectively. It's the two-edged sword. It's like the coin.
See, now
On
that
one
me,
side,
that is such a useful teaching. Just to say that is so useful. And it doesn't have any concepts in it. It just says, "Hey, try it out." In order to really be good with your words.
yeah, well, what do you want to know? What's the question that's rattling around in your head like a marble in a can right now? Just grab the can and shake it. Like, here it is. Let's shake it around. What is in there? What is in there that you need to know? What is in there that's sort of like that's in the inquiry right now?
Let me take a moment and just see.
It's like, what is there? What is there to say in actual fact that's of any value?
In a
It's
way,
sort of
we're
just
getting
this,
thrown back on ourselves, right? And so I must be saying that a lot of what we're, maybe even what we're perceiving and thinking that we're picking up is ourselves. It's a reflection of ourselves, and we're getting thrown back on ourselves. And to acknowledge that from the very get-go, from the beginning, and then to get into discussions, not to find the right guy or anything like that, because we can always throw back on ourselves, no matter who we're talking to. Just
so really it's being
doesn't need to
authentic.
be a teacher or any kind of like a wise man.
It's just being authentically right where you are. It's really a recognition of just being present moment, like right now. Like what's happening right now. Okay, the apprehension that I had five minutes ago is dissipated. It's like I've gone into the feeling in my body, and it's like, yeah, it's okay, it's great. Okay, just let that go. It doesn't need to be there because it's really irrelevant. But it's not irrelevant because what was happening back there was really important because it was happening right then. And what's happening right now is what's really important. As we know, there's only right now. There is no past, there is no future. There is only now, and that's it. It's in actual fact just being all the teachings that I've ever been, and all of them. Sure, there's lots of concepts and stuff, and there's lots of traps, and it's almost like a big river, and there's all these little eddies that people get tied and trapped in. But in actual fact, we are the entire river, and that entire river flows through us right now, right this very moment, right at this very instant. Life is. Time and space is relative to the mind conceptuality of just creating it as an idea. It's just an idea. The instant life is right now is all that we are, and that's it. So in that, there is a you and there is a me. But that again is just an idea. But it's also what we're working with energetically. It's like we were talking about before. It's like, where do we actually meet in this? Like, do people actually meet? I suppose that is a good question too. Do people actually meet, or is this rattling? There's marbles in this can rattling around right now. Just sort of coming along, and sort of my marble that I'm sort of going to you. Does it actually do anything there in you? This is communication right across the planet, like all the time. But it's also happening on this sub level, just in energy field itself. The quantum theory is proved, as we know. You are the tree outside my window, as much as I am. The entire planet operates on a cellular level. But also we're in this. I'm in this room. This is a room. I have a computer. I have a glass of water. I have Richard talking. I have Richard talking with silence, with a smile, which is actually a feeling.
I'm having such full days and lots of thoughts. I'm actually in a project now to kind of review a lot of the talks that I made, even some from several years ago. And so then I'm not looking at them all thoroughly, but I kind of remember the time, and I kind of look at a few minutes of them, and I'm recompressing a whole bunch of them is what I'm doing. So then I see myself from a couple of years ago, and maybe longer, 3. And then I think, oh my gosh, I've talked to so many people. And then there's so many good things that actually we said, and probably it dragged down a lot too. And a lot of times we just got lost, and in a way I'm kind of working on a project to compile a bunch of things, and automatically it's kind of coming that I'm taking stock. I was like, whoa, wow, look at all that. It's gone by really quickly, and then it's really very dense, actually. Not dense that it's thick-headed, but dense that there's a lot of material there.
Yeah, there is.
And,
I've only seen sort of a tiny little bit. I must have seen maybe 20 or 30 videos that Never Not Here have done, or maybe 40. But, it's sort of like, wow, it's like you've actually covered a lot of territory in a really short time.
Yeah, I get kind of wild, and really went for it. So then I've been noticing I keep forgetting a lot of things. And one thing, I used to do emailing a couple of years ago. In 2009, I was doing webcasts, and I wanted to see where it could go. And I was emailing. I had like about a 2,000 list or something like that. And so then I was, because I was trying to develop a regular schedule, and then when I stopped doing that much work, I stopped
Yeah.
emailing, and so then I thought, okay, well, I don't know, I mean, I don't know if I would do webcasts when I traveled, live webcasts, and maybe I was trying to, attract people that would interact and would call in. Okay, so that's why I felt that I wanted to build an audience because I wanted to have a participation. So that turns out
Yeah.
that I didn't email for like 10 months or more, and I was paying this service, and I kept thinking, oh, I got to quit that service because why should I be paying every month, right? And so then I finally got to it, and then I says, oh, I'll just send one more email and say goodbye, right? And people kind of took it like I was pulling out a Never Not Here or something, and they thought, oh, this guy's got a sad story. He's disillusioned, right? And so then I was just saying, like, I'm going to save $25 a month is all I was saying. But I'm not sending any more emails. Well, it was really kind of cool because maybe I got 50 people saying how much they appreciated me and stuff like that, emailing me and saying, they've watched for years and or whatever, or not, but they, not everyone watched for years, but a lot. Okay, anyhow, a lot of people wrote me with appreciation and
Yeah.
and saying that I make a difference or that I made a difference in their life.
Mm.
And
You've made,
now I'm kind of
you've made,
looking back at it myself, because I'm doing that kind of that composite thing. Somebody invited me to be in a film fest, and I thought, online film fest, and so he wanted me to send him some movies, and so then I started getting exaggerated and sent him a whole lot.
yeah. You've actually, you wouldn't have known about it, but I know at least half a dozen people who have seen videos on Never Not Here and come away from it going, wow, you know, which I, which is really why I sent you an email when you recently to say, hey, guess what? Do you realize what you've actually done for people? You've actually done quite a lot for people. And I'd like to publicly acknowledge that the service you have done for people is awesome. It's beautiful. And it's perfect where you are and who you are. I couldn't have actually done what you've done because you've actually done this service from a point of inquiry of, in a sense, wanting to know something that you didn't know. And because you've actually been doing that from that place, the inquiry has been totally different. Whereas I would look at it and do the same thing that you're doing from a totally different place and not find what you have found and not pulled out of people that you've been talking to the actual answers and the questions and the dialogue that's come up. It's very specifically you orientated. Can you see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like
Like there's really not much here, as far as me.
now,
Like these things, and people tell me that of course I like to hear feedback, and I like to hear that somebody could have a little bit modicum of freedom that they weren't having before, And I wouldn't say that it's me that did it, or they would have it later, or sooner or later, or whatever. And maybe that it goes in and out too. I'm not trying to, but somehow things don't really come in and settle on this plane here. There's not much to stick to here, and it kind of goes through, and then I never think like, oh, that's good, I should rest. No, I just think like I just know something can open in another way, and that's why I ask these questions. Like, I mean, can we really talk to each other?
hmm,
Because I know that something can open in a different way, but I don't know what it is or how it would happen.
well, there's only one of us here. Start there.
But yeah, but I don't want to start there. I want to end up there. That's just so obvious. But I don't want to start there because I think that kind of it messes it up. Because then if anyone can plant a doubt that maybe there wasn't one of us here, maybe there was two, and then
But
it all
yeah, well,
falls.
just created anytime you like with the mind saying, oh, well, there's two of us here. But energetically, there's only one. Conceptually, from the mind, there's two. And there's the choice of flipping in and out of that anytime you like. You can be two anytime you like. You can talk concept anytime you want to. Or you can actually be the experience of just being anytime you want to.
Tell me more, like what you mean by energetically, because you've said that a couple times. And exactly what do you mean by energetically? Is energy some kind of fundamental phenomena, or what is energy anyhow? Is it just a
It's
tool?
very
Is it the
basic,
stuff we're made out of?
the stuff we're made out of, the stuff we are. Just stop for a minute. Just stop. Energetically, just stop. Stop the mind, stop the inquiry, stop thinking, and just rest. When I was 13, I got into rifle shooting, and I went into because I was sort of connected with the long range, like 1,000 meter rifle stuff, and it was like I tried it once, and the gun actually bruised my shoulder, and I'll forget this. So I was 13, and I got into small bore rifles, only 25 meters, and it took me 12 weeks to knock the dot out of the center of the bullseye. You get 100 if you get the bullseye, you get 100.10 if you knock the dot out of the center. I did knocking the dot out of the center after 12 weeks, like twice in a row, and then I came back the next week and did it twice in a row. And they said to me, you need to train for the Olympics to do this. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go for that. But I've actually thought about what actually happened then. What actually happened in that process was that when I was lying there and the rifle was there, I was in complete space of energy, of the background energy. I was just resting in that background energy. I knew where the bullet was going to go before I pulled the trigger. I could feel it. Now, a lot of the masters, a lot of the teachers of the world, they say drop into silence. So I mean, Gangaji or whatever you want, just be the silence. Just be silent. It's really, in essence, just slowing this down and allowing it to actually settle in the body. It's just allowing your energy itself. That I was a real estate agent at one time, and what I found was that the energy was here all the time. It was in my head the whole time, all the time. There was no rest. Whereas I've also been a builder and a gardener and a designer and a carpenter, and the energy, it's there for a while, but the energy relaxes, and you can actually be in the energy of the body, just doing whatever it needs to do, whether it's planting lettuces or pansies or building a rock wall. There's a rhythm that happens with the body itself that takes you out of the head space and into the physical body space. But it's not actually a physical body space. It's the body space of just centering and being that which, when you're doing Tai Chi and Qigong, for instance, it's like you are that energy. And really it's the background energy to absolutely everything that the whole planet is. The form, the actual movement in Qigong, for instance, is just to give your body an excuse, in a sense, to slow down and stop and feel and be the feeling of the energy that's actually flowing as you. There's no mind there to say, oh, the energy's flowing through me, because there's no me there. There's no mind there. You are just the energy doing its thing. So when I say, or when you ask, what am I talking about when I talk about just energy? It's what's the word? I think it's a misnomer. It's just it's a bit like the handle to a hammer. It's not the hammer at all. It's just the word energy is just something to hang on to for the mind, so that you've got some idea about what the heck is this bloke talking about. It's actually a feeling in the body. It is the actual core and essence of the universe itself that you can just plainly tap into. and it's effortless. There's nothing you have to do it, apart from stop the mind rattling around. Those marbles in the can. It's like just there's a hole in the can there somewhere. Just open up that little hole and let all the marbles fall out. What you have to do.
People go lifetimes trying to figure out where that hole is, and I don't know. You're saying, oh, just go to a qigong master. It happened like that, Forget the marbles.
The teachings are about that. It's about how do I actually find this hole to let all these marbles out so that there's no concepts there anymore. How can I actually translate all these concepts that people carry around into actual practice? But it gets down to being the oneness aspect and not the duality, and not the two. It's like, yes, there's you there and me here. That's an idea. It's only an idea. The actual reality is there's only one of us here. Energetically, there's only one energy on this entire planet, of which we're all like fish in this big school of fish, all swimming around, playing with the same energy.
That's a realization that you have when the marbles are out, right? But I mean, when the marbles are still in, then that speaking that doesn't really help get those marbles out, or does it? Or it does. I don't know.
Where'd the marbles come from?
Yeah, people even say, I don't know, go to the source of the marbles. Where are those things?
Where'd they come from?
It came from interest and from believing that I'm insufficient right now and I need a few extra marbles, and those marbles are going to lead me to where my sufficiency is. And so then this neediness, it's a kind of a belief in neediness, and then the marble machine gets going and does its duty and looks for where those needs are going to be fulfilled.
It's like an ice machine that just keeps on pumping it out,
Right. Well, that's especially if you feel like you're always needy. Needy means not whole. I need something. I'm not whole, and so then that's a license for the ice machine to keep roaring. But I mean, if you could feel complete for even a few moments, I mean, maybe just by seeing your grandson or something like that, and saying, "Whoa, the marbles just go out, right?"
Yeah.
And maybe if anything, you just think how lucky you are. Right? Here's this little baby. Wowee. When I was a father, I wasn't that much into it. It was marvelous, but I was trying to figure out how to cope and how to raise him up and how to train him right and all those other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sort of lucky in that field. I was the main carer for 3 children for over a decade. So I actually discovered the feminine side of the human, like in the male. The male, in a sense, what we're talking about too is getting the male and female energies in balance. And in actual fact, in Qigong, it's when in yoga, in Kundalini yoga, when the two energy fields, the masculine and feminine, are in balance, then they become one. There's the oneness aspect. Does
that just mean the passive and active, or what? Of course, when you say masculine and feminine, we can read a lot into that. But,
yeah.
So in other words, like we could pray to God and say, "Give me, give me, give me," or we could listen to God and say, "Well, what do you got? What do you want of me?" And so then one of those energies would be more passive and more like open to hear, and one of them is, "No, I'm so full, I got to spill out and talk." And so even if I praise God, right? I mean, I'm just using a metaphor of religion right now. So
God's fine. The metaphor of God is fine. It's just a word, really. Really, it puts some people in touch with the idea that there is something greater than their own life that they're sitting in right now. And there is. But also what they're sitting in right now is the very same thing. There is no differentiation between God, the concept, and God, the experience, because it's the very same ball. It's the same place. It sits in the same physical space as the concept does. But the concept sitting inside the space of the actual non-duality, the wholeness, that is all of energy of now. It's like the mind is just a tool that's there that comes up with ideas, that signs the checkbook, that drives the car.
So part of that oneness is like what we could call a collective consciousness, right? I mean,
Yeah, except
knowing. I mean, there's no really edges on it. That's why they call it collective, right? There's no borders, so maybe that tends to point toward something grander, larger, and so maybe that's oneness, collective consciousness.
I suppose the mind has this capacity to focus on one point. It's like an electron microscope, really. Whereas like for instance, when a scientist is looking down through a microscope, it's very similar to the mind looking at anything at all. I mean, it's just a very narrow focus, isn't it?
Very, yes.
So if you take that narrow focus away, it's like reading one book, for instance. It's just going into a narrow focus. It's like having a particular conversation. It's just a narrow focus. But also in the same time zone is that scientist looking through the electron microscope. He knows in himself that there is a vaster reality, like it's available at the very same time. So in a sense, even if you're in duality of the mind, and there is two, it's okay to actually be that two, knowing also that there is a vastness that's available, that is always there. And the thing about my life from very early in my life is that vastness has always been the actual reference point to life itself. And I was sitting in life wondering, what the heck is this? What is this thing called life? It just appeared totally crazy. It didn't make sense. It's like I was always trying to, what the heck?
So you say you were in the vastness. Let me get this clear. So you were in the vastness, and then you were saying, what is the vastness? Or you were just sitting in the vastness saying, what is this narrowness? What is this personhood that I'm supposed to be carrying around?
What is this narrowness? What is this? It's like at 2 years old, I dropped in. It was like, whoa, what am I doing here? Was the feeling. At 8 years old, I sort of put words to that. You know, it was like, oh, so what happened when I was 2 was this feeling, this idea of what happened here, that I was sitting in a sandpit. It was like I came to realization that I was in this thing. And it actually felt like a psychic pollution in a sense. It was a bit like, whoa, energetically, it's like, what is this place? It's like I've come into this energy field that's really, whoa, man, this is something that I've really got to step back and, you know, like look at. So from 2 years old, I've been doing just that. When I was 26, it's a bit like, whoa, okay, all right, I'm not reading. I don't need to read anymore. I'll just drift along and just be this awareness and just let life do what it's doing, you know. So I went off and got into business and relationships and children and all this whole. And I looked at the book Siddhartha by Herman Hesse and read it, and I thought, well, yeah, I'll do that. I'll just do that. I'll become a merchant and do the whole trip. And when I'm 60, I'll go off and be a teacher. So here I am, 61 now, and it's a bit like at 60, I thought I looked at this thing and I realized, oh damn, that's right. I said I was going to be a teacher at 60. Oh, bugger. I don't want to do that.
Okay, now let's dig into this a little deeper, because you said, okay, now, I mean, I wanted to ask this exact same question, but I was going to ask it from the other side. You know, there's a vastness and then there's this personhood, and somehow the link between those two is obscure, right? And I was going to say something like...
Not obscure at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Well... So many of us are in the personhood, and we're looking into either the collective consciousness or just consciousness, and sometimes it seems like a mystery or a miracle, or, you know, a higher power, or sometimes we could just say that it's so wide what we don't notice, and so what we don't notice is beneath our consciousness. Let's call it subconscious. So the subconscious is so bigger, and we haven't gone there, we haven't stepped there. yet. And so we don't know anything about the borders of it. And so it might be that there's only one subconscious, and you and I have the same one. And we don't know because we don't know anything about it, And so then the link between like what we call our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, our personality and our reactions all come out of our subconscious mind somewhere because they bubble up, and we don't know exactly why do they keep coming up. I'm always running away from them or trying to read another book in my conscious mind and somehow take a teaching or, study a practice or join a religion or do something, go to recovery AA or something to get rid of my addictive behaviors. And where's that link? It's not so easy. It's just not so straightforward. How does it happen?
It's like, where's your reference point?
My reference, is that is that the answer? Or there are more other questions?
It's like what you're saying is from a particular reference point, isn't it? It's from the reference point of having a personality that has a particular flavor. But what I'm saying is realize that who you are is the greater reality, having this personality flavor to explore. It's a bit like in the sense that we've walked into a movie theater and what we're exploring is the character is just sat in the chair looking at the screen. And the screen is what you're seeing through your eyes. But knowing all the time that you can actually close your eyes, walk out of the theater and go off and explore something else. It's like the flavor of how you explore it really is the personality of Richard. It's like the reference point there is the vastness and not the actual reference point of the Richard. The Richard's quite okay as a reference point, but realize the Richard actually fits into the vastness as well. It's like the Richard really is the scientist looking down through the microscope at this tiniest little thing. It's like in essence, when I look at even what's happening here in the vastness, it's like how much of it can I'm not connecting to anything at all. It's like if I rely on these senses here, these physical senses, to actually plug in to what's available, I'm accessing an infinitesimal small amount of what's actually available to actually plug into if I'm using these senses of the physical human body. Now, as awareness, the physical human body is like a radio receiver that, it's got a vast amount of stations that can just tune into absolutely everything it wants to, anytime it wants to, turn up the volume as much or as loud or as quiet as it wants to. With the vastness having a radio receiver, basically. And the radio receiver is the human sensory data system that is plugged into the world, that creates the world for itself through its own senses. Until you actually don't do that, you can just step away from the human senses. And what happens in your dreams, for instance? What happens when you actually go blank, when there's that blank space in dream? Where do you go then? Who is there now when there's that blank space in dream? In every night, for me, there's a chunk of space that I don't have access to. What is happening there? Now the Advaitas say, well, that's who we are. We are this absolute unknowability. That is who we are, according to the Advaitas. And yes, they may be true. But I've always reconciled this thing of, okay, well, that's true, sure. But if you can't know it and you don't know it, then, okay, well, we just don't know it. You know it by its absence. You can actually see that it's there by its absence. Like in life itself, you'll come across a space in your life where, I'm driving my car, for instance, yeah? Driving down the highway, I've got to go 5 hours, and I look at my clock, it's 2 o'clock, I've got to go another 300 k's, and then the next time I look at my clock, it's 3:30. What happened to that hour and a half? Richard wasn't there, was he? Yet he was there.
It's strange, because like all that has to be inferred by who we land in. We land in this personality, and we infer, hey, there was a blank.
Yeah. But according to the Advaita, the blank is what and who we are. Having a human experience that's driving the car. So really, in a sense, when I ask you, okay, what's your reference point? It's like the reference point, I'm Sam right now. I can be Sam right now, sitting here having this conversation, throwing my hands around and doing the driving down the highway and coming up with story and blah and everything else. But in the background, I'm that scientist knowing that I'm looking down through the tube, down through that electron microscope, looking at this tiniest little aspect of life, but also knowing in my feeling realm, in my feeling, in my body, in my knowing, that there's this huge vastness that I have access to, that I can get my radio receiver and tune in and turn the volume up or down and do anything I actually want to. It's like I mentioned before that in the 80s I transformed 16,000 into 140,000 in 12 weeks on the stock market. That's purely from just tuning in to what was actually happening. Nothing else. I didn't know a damn thing about anything relative to any of those stocks. Not a thing. I ran my finger down. One felt warm, one felt cold. I bought the warm one. I sold the cold one. That was it. My stockbroker would say something about something or other, and from the actual feeling in his being, I would actually buy and sell stuff. I made 20 grand in 20 minutes just from that. It was just like, I said, okay, what's happening? What's popped up? And he'd say, oh, this is I said, oh, stop, the third one, that one there. Buy 20 grand's worth. And he said, oh, are you sure? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, okay. So he put the order through. We did a whole pile of business. 20 minutes later, he said, oh, that stock's doubled in price. I said, sell it. Made 20 grand in 20 minutes. A grand a minute. Purely from being the vastness aspect. And the guy who actually started the Hilton Hotel, for instance, the whole Hilton Hotel chain, he called it, I've forgotten what he called it, but basically it's tapping into the intuitive process that's there. It's like the 18th Dragon Master in Qigong in China who's still alive. He has a book of which I've got a copy of around here somewhere, where the essence of what he says is that the reason for doing Qigong is to drop yourself into this intuitive capability, which in actual fact is dropping into the energy that you were asking about before. Is just putting yourself in tune with the vastness. And in that vastness, there's no need for words. The words part is just something that you can use as an availability, just like your radio sitting over there on the shelf. I don't have a radio, but you know what I mean. You can turn it on or you can turn it off, you know. So in essence, what's your reference point? Now, if your reference point is the idea that I'm a Richard confined to this life and everything else, then I would suggest to completely be that and explore the fact that that is what you feel, that is what you think, because that is the key for actually unwrapping the vastness. It's a bit like, in a sense, the vastness is always here, but it's a bit like you can walk past a paling fence in a street that's too high to look over, but if you look sideways and you walk fast enough and you look through the cracks, the paling fence disappears. You can actually see on the other side, can't you? Have you ever done that?
Something like that, maybe. It's a change in focus, right? Somehow you just get used to focusing somewhere else, and what's in front of you just kind of disappears.
Well, the fence doesn't disappear. It's just you're looking through the cracks of the fence, and you can focus on the fence. What I'm saying here is you can focus on the Richard, or you can focus on the cracks that are available for you to focus on through the Richard. Like when you're driving, for instance, that hour and a half that disappears, it's like, what actually happened there? Where was my body in that? What was I actually feeling in my body What was the essence of experience through the body itself?
All right, so then maybe a crack is important. Somehow a crack has to show up, right? Or is a crack always there? Crack is an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, you can stop. You can just plain stop and look through the crack in the fence. And it's like, oh, wow, look at that. It's actually there. But all you have to do is stop the Richard. Stop the Richard long enough so that the crack is available to actually look in. And it's like, oh, gee whiz. See, as a child, I spent the first 5 years in nature completely. First 5 years of my life, I was living on farms in Tasmania and Australia, and you know, I had to look after the cows and all the animals and the goat and the dog and the cat and get the chooks and, you know, do everything, right? So most of life was involved with, you know, where the ants were and what the kookaburra was doing and what the snake was doing, and you know, it's like reading the weather and knowing I had to be home by dark and all of this. And as a little kid, it was just let to be in nature, you know. It's like, so my reference point has always been the vastness. So when the whole, you know, thing of school happened, it's really like this narrowness started to happen. And in high school, I used to sit there and look out the window, you know, because it bored me, like completely. I was just bored. I'd sit, you know, and just look out the window. And one time the teacher said to me, Noel Pearce, what were you just talking about? So I repeated everything he said for the last 5 minutes, almost verbatim, because my mind was in such a state of relaxation and just pure beingness of the energy, of just living the actual energy space, that the mind part of life was such a tiny, insignificant part of it, that being able to repeat everything he said for the last 5 minutes was easy. So in a sense, it's like, allow the crack in the fence to be seen. You know? It's like, look through that crack in the fence and allow it as the reference point. Because in a sense, it's like, if you look through the crack in the screen, right, you're looking this direction and you're looking that direction. Now the next crack in the fence also is looking this direction and that direction. So it doesn't take very far beyond the fence to actually start to see the complete vastness of all of it. Because the fence is only there for a really small space, in actual fact, in the cognitive process. It's like the trap of the duality of the idea that we have an identity is just an idea. It's like, yeah, sure, celebrate the idea. In fact, you know, I go looking for ego because I'm in this vastness all the time, and without you talking to me or asking me questions, there's nothing to say. So we respond from that vastness to the world that's actually out there, to the world that is actually here, now. In quantum physics, the observed creates the observer, as the observer creates the observed. It's like there's no differentiation between the two. So sitting in this space in 2006, I went for a space of several months where it was just basically vacant space. And I felt, well, if this is all life is, what's the point? The point is not to actually get back to this vastness that the Advaita people talk about, this absoluteness of non-being, of the unknowable. There's no point. What's the point? I mean, once you've done it, it's like, yeah, okay, next.
Yeah, but the guy that does always saying next is got to be your mind, right? I mean, what else is that, right?
That's my point. What happens next is that we go back to the human data sensory system that we're actually here to use as the vehicle for exploration of this reality right now. We're here to explore now. And if you're off chasing God, all you'll ever find is you're off chasing God. Because you'll never find God by chasing God. It's only by giving it up that it actually arrives, because it's absolutely nothing. There's nothing there. Apart from when you actually come back from that space, and you only know that space because there's this vacant space, like driving down the highway and it's like, oh, an hour and a half just disappeared. It's like, where did the hour and a half go? It's like I've done 200 Ks and it's like, wow, that's interesting. It's just like 2 minutes has gone past. Yeah, it's sort of like a couple of hours, you know. It's like what we have really here is, what we're here for is to explore humanity evolving unto itself through awareness itself, knowing that we are the vastness, using this restrictive vehicle called the human sense data system. This is all that I've come down to in all of everything that I've been voraciously exploring everything about awareness and watched every little moment of every little insy bitsy little bit of time since I was 2 years old.
So explore humanity, you're saying, is exploring through your own vehicle and
right.
Right.
Yeah. In every possible manner you can come up with. So when people say, well, I've often written that, on Facebook, for instance, I've often written that everything you're saying is absolutely true. And it is. But everything has a particular reference point until you actually have no reference point. But to have no reference point is the Advaita aspect of saying, well, it's like there is nothing here. And if there is nothing here, then okay, what are we here doing with this human vehicle to explore the nothing? It's a catch-22. And all it comes down to is paradox. Because if you believe one part of and religions do this really well. One school will believe this, and another school will believe that, and this other school will believe this, and they all have these little dialogues, and they all actually shoot each other and kill each other because your dialogue's not quite my dialogue. But in actual fact, it's the same God, it's the same energy field, it's the same essence. Once they actually stop the concept of the mind, they're all sitting in the same energy field itself, which is the entirety of what this earth is.
I was talking to someone and they were telling me about how to transform energy. In other words, if something comes up, we were talking about, I think you and I were talking about that too. A little earlier we were just talking about when something comes up, it's energy. It's just a raw energy. Okay, so then that energy could have a form like anger or frustration or some kind of outrage, or it could have a lot of things. And they were talking about how to transform it. And I was kind of going on the tack like, why not just go before the energy pops up, and notice that it comes in, and then that you don't really have to adopt it or you don't really have to ride it. You can just stand, you can watch it in a way. I don't know that I wasn't really saying witnessing and all that stuff, but that's probably where all that stuff comes from. Staying in the back and then just watch it go through and say, okay, well, that's nice, but it's not, is it me? Right? And then they were saying, well, so then the next thing that came into my awareness was a book called Creative Stress. And so this guy was, probably talking something about the same thing, like the stress of the world should, for him, it's about time it was put to some positive use, to use that stress, and because the stress is here, which means between countries and between peoples and between governments and people and all the stress that, we hear about all the time, And I was wondering, because then I realized I had a belief, kind of like in karma or destiny or something, that if I'm not destined to have stress, then I just stay away from it, And I just realized that I avoided all, I was in Europe in the 60s, I think during the Israeli war. I was thinking at one time to go around through Africa. I had a motorcycle there, but then I thought, no, Israel, blah, no, I'm not going to go where there's a war zone. Okay, I mean, just like this, let me go another place. I was in Utah, and I lived there for a long time, and there's mountains real close to Salt Lake. And I started to climb up those mountains. And then some kids are quite agile, I was a little bit older, in my 30s maybe. And these agile kids that were maybe teenagers or something, they would go right down, we'd be on the top of a mountain. They'd go right down kind of this talus slope, and then there would be a cliff there, and they would find their way on that cliff and maybe walk around on it, and somehow there's ledges there, and they would go on it. And there was like maybe 800-foot drop or something. And I thought, well, I would never go anywhere near that edge, Okay, the same thing just comes to me like when I lived in Europe later, and I lived in Italy for 10 years. I never went to Ireland. I never went to where the Spanish wars were. I never went to Croatia when there was troubles over there. And so then I had a belief that, my destiny, my karma didn't really have all that turmoil in it, and I could somehow be apart from that. That was something that was important to me, to be separate. And so then I started to listen to this guy and his book about creative stress. And apparently he's saying if you can't feel the stress of the world, you're looking in all the wrong places, because it's there. And so then the thing would be to play a game that says, like, what am I going to do with this stress, and how could I ease it, And apparently this guy spent, times, he was director of something in the United Nations, and here and there, and in Africa, stationed here and there, and saw every tragedy that there was to see. But somehow he didn't really, I thought that when you see all that, you sure do get a feeling, and that feeling is like what everybody is moving from this very anxious place. And he's apparently saying, no, that's not the way it's working, And some of the most people in the Middle East or in Palestine or in Israel, the ones that are most activists for working out negotiations and peace process, are the ones that had their children shot dead, and the ones that, had this horrible things happen to their families. And somehow they haven't gone for revenge, They just decided, okay, that's enough, we're going to be working the peace process. So there's another process that I was never aware of, that actually, you don't have to work in stress, but you kind of have to really know that there is a creative stress is there. And so that's the game, that could be the game that say, where will I put my mind to, this tool of mine?
Well, those people would have actually just been in touch with their bodies. It's like, and then turned around and, well, yes, I could actually be the revenge person, and pick up the AK-47 and go out there and start blasting the hell out of all these other people. But also, in a sense, there's this evolutionary aspect that appears to be happening on this planet right now too, of actually stepping out of the old paradigms of hate, really, hate, jealousy, all the whole trip, that the negative aspect of the human vehicle, the human intellect, the human emotion seems to be evolving. So really, those people would have actually stepped into that aspect of life too. Really gets down to the personal aspect of who am I? What am I?
Maybe, if they know that, that's wonderful. If they don't, they're just getting really practical, because they said, well, the AK-47 route, we've done it a million times, and, and out of that, my daughter was shot in the back of the head or something like that, And so that didn't work.
Yeah.
Or they could maybe have some kind of a really greater opening and just feel like, and see life from a different angle.
But again, it gets back to just stepping completely into the moment of where we are, or where they are in themselves. And if those people, I would say, would step into their own authenticity of that energy, of, like the direct connection to spirit, if you like. You talk about what is this energy. Really, it's the direct line to God. It's like, you are that. I am that. There is nothing else but this directness. So in a sense, they become a vehicle for allowing compassion and peace and love and all of those things, which really, in a sense, it feels to me like this is one of the major reasons why humanity is existing, is the evolution of the heart, is to open up the heart aspect to life itself, to what is actually here. It's allowing a clear energy pathway through the whole thing of what's actually here. To be blocked, without getting into all the chakra stuff, to be blocked on sort of hate, for instance, is a very base chakra thing. It's like a broken heart can actually create, you killed my daughter, so I'm going to actually kill your family now. It's like that's a really base chakra thing. But if there's an opening there, if energy is flowing right through those people, and they actually feel the essence of the energy field, that which is the vastness, which is the vast awareness that you could say is God itself, is pure existence, those people are tapping into that space and coming from that space of love and compassion. And this is actually what's happening through them. It's like the death of their daughter, for instance, or whoever it is really the trigger for allowing that to come through.
See, the way we started, first I started asking, like, can we really get each other? Can we know each other? Can we duplicate each other's communication? And, and I said it's more than just words, so then the heart is in it. The heart is part of it. Can our hearts connect, or they're already connected? Can we just realize that they're connected and feel it and feel the intensity of it? And so then I started saying, okay, well, I mean, I told the whole story of my email campaign, and lots of people said they liked me and I liked what I did, and then I started saying that I'm working on a project to consolidate some of my old stuff, and I'm looking at myself in different years and trying to make head or tails of what's really happening, because I don't have a purpose or a reason or like an objective or anything like that. Something's just moving me, and I kind of have the excuse that I do what I do because I can do it, see. And so then I'm set. This is all a grand setup, and then we're saying, well, what is your point of reference, And then I'm trying to say, well, I know something can open, right? And I don't want to go to the war zone and try to experience those things. I think I would be really bad at that, because I would really be ripped apart. I don't know if I'd be very good at that, but I want to add my energy to those things that are happening, those breakaway things that are happening. And somehow I want to do that, with vocabulary and with, declarations and with words and thoughts. And and I don't want to do it out of urgency, but I want to do it because its time is here. And, and someone could say that is urgency, by the way. But I mean, in other words, like I want to stir up a hornet's nest. No, I want to find people, and I want to get involved with people that want to do that. And somehow I'd like to give my abilities to be helpful toward that in any way, just by saying it now, you and me talking, and the people that'll watch this, somehow laying something on the table I always thought had value. And I think that this has value too, It's so easy, and especially the way I said it, because I realized I had a belief that because I don't have violence and tragedy in my life, because of that, I had a belief that in karma and destiny, and that I didn't really believe I was a good boy in the past lifetime, and now I'm getting rewarded. I don't have all those links there, but I just had the belief that I am separate, and that some people feel hurts, and some people don't pick up on hurts somehow, and so then I was actually sheltering myself from these things, for sure.
What you were saying before was that if you're not in tune with the pain of the world, you're actually in a space of disconnection.
Yeah, you're tuning it out. You don't have to tune it in. It's here.
Yeah. And what happened to me years ago, mostly years ago, was 1996 or somewhere. was I went through this whole opening and really shedding a lot of energy, like really, really a lot of energy. And what happened was for 3 days, I went through this process where I was laughing and crying and feeling the entirety of the earth's pain. So there was absolutely nothing I could do about that. It was just actually completely feeling the entirety of all the earth's pain, like completely. And in a sense, it's like to be in this open awareness space is to realize that all of this pain exists. I am that pain. I am the bliss, but I'm not the pain and I'm not the bliss. I'm all of those things. Everything that anybody has ever felt, I've felt. It's like I've gone into the mind. I did an advanced writing course years ago with a whole pile of people, about 15 years ago. And in Tasmania, there was this guy called Martin Bryant. He shot 34 people and created a whole bloodbath thing, one of those. And we were writing, and part of the writing project was, okay, for the next 15 minutes, you have to write something that's really, really deep. So I actually went into the mind of Martin Bryant and I wrote from his point of view as he was shooting these people, as he was actually murdering all of these people. Just purely stepping right into this man. And I read it, I wrote it, and it was a bit like I couldn't stop crying as I was writing it. So I read it back to these people, and they all just cried, and it was a bit like they said, "How did you do this? How can you possibly know what this man is feeling?" And it's purely, simply allowing all that is to actually flow through, to actually just be the flow that life is. There is no way of me not knowing what it's like for somebody to kill somebody else's daughter. But also, I've birthed through my hands 3 of my own children. So it's like having that balance of feeling the pain of the entirety of the universe that's actually happening on this planet, and also feeling creation of birth that actually happens through one's children and through daffodils sort of coming out of a freezing cold frozen ground and bursting into flower. It's like there's so much beauty on this planet as well as pain. But the mind itself is what actually gets tied up into locking itself away from the pain, or it locks itself into the bliss. It's like, I don't want to know about the pain, I want the bliss. So in a sense, they're actually just living the duality that they got happening in here, in the mind, in the concept, because they're trying to escape from the pain itself by actually stepping off into bliss and pleasure and hedonistic trips, or whatever you want to call it. The trick is just to simply be in life, allowing the vastness, allowing the focus of, the radio set of whatever you're actually doing in your life, and just simply feel and be all of it, all the time. Just simply be awareness. We are nothing else. We are just awareness, having a human experience. Why it's here, I have no idea. Why we're having this humanity experience on this crazy planet that's got all this, whoa, man, oh, I have no idea. But amongst it, there's this spiritual evolution seems to be happening on and in and as the earth itself. There is no separation between you and me. There is no separation between me and the earth doing its thing. Mind creates a separation. My mind, I can create a separation. It's not a problem. I can do that. It's easy. I can become a Noel Pearce, teacher of people, personal coach, writer, TV presenter, whatever you like. Person who sort of goes and shoots guns at the Olympics and gets gold medals. It's like these things. It's like they're just things of life. Our purpose, in a sense, is to actually feel all of it and be all of it. There is nothing else to do apart from just explore and be what this allows us to do. That's all I've come down to in the entirety of all of life is that.
Feel all, there's so much out there to feel all. And then, how do you avoid the temptation to select? And like you said, I just want the bliss. No, I don't want the pain. And then, okay, let's say I want to let some pain in. Well, I mean, I could very well get overwhelmed and say I'm letting too much in. I'm out of balance. And then people that are trying to do good works and they're letting the pain in so they can really feel it. And maybe they're very positive, action comes out of that. But still, are they seeing the beauty? That you said this whole. Is there a balance, and how do you maintain it, and do you need to, or is it automatic?
There is nothing to maintain. It's like there is no personality, there is no Richard here. There's just a personality that's wrapped around an energy field. There's no Sam here. There's just a personality that's wrapped around an energy field. We're an energy field exploring itself. So when the pain comes, the balance will also come. Really, your comment is based on fear. It's based on the fear that, okay, if I go there into that pain, I'll be sort of like, oh dear, this is too much for me. It's like, oh dear, what am I going to do now? Like, I need some bliss over here to sort of make myself feel better.
It's all brand new because I just realized, even a day ago, I just realized how much, to what extent I filter and, kind of tune out pain and just say, well, I can't take there's so much pain in the earth. I make an excuse and say there's so much pain on the earth that I could do it 24/7 for a lot of time, for all my years, and why do I need to do that? I'll be out of balance,
Yeah.
But that's just extremism or something like that. That would never happen that way.
Yeah, life chooses for you. It's like, in a sense, it's like life itself. I mean, some people turn around and can say, well, life's predetermined. But in actual fact, it sort of semi-is. I can sort of see there are certain things that are sort of little loops that have happened in my life that I sort of hit one part of the loop and the mind will come in and I'll say, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I step off and go off and do some other tangent. And then 15 years later, it's like, oh, right. I'm back to this very same thing again.
That's when I was saying link, between subconscious and conscious, because it keeps coming back, right? And you say, no, stay down there, I don't want to see it.
No. I don't want to be a teacher. Like, this is like when I was 27, this guy said to me, he said, you should be a teacher. You should be a spiritual teacher. And I sort of looked at him and it was like, it's like, no. I come along and said, well, and I realized that was one of the very, very core aspects of this energy field called Sam. That this is one of the major aspects why I have this thing of this aversion for teaching, because I find it's so easy to do, but at the same time it's like, and lots of people have said, you have to teach. But in essence, there's been this thing in my life where it's like, oh, right. Okay. And in a sense, it gets down to this thing of, it's like in the 70s, I went looking, like for a whole year, I went looking for anybody at all who could understand anything that I was saying. And I couldn't find one person, not one person. 1977, couldn't find one person who actually understood anything I was saying. I should have gone off and found a Buddhist monk or a Zen monk at the time. I didn't even think about finding a Buddhist or a Zen monk. I went out looking for anybody in my entire field of friends and people who would sit there and they'd hear me talk for hours and hours, And it's like, well, they'd ask me a question and I'd sort of say, I remember one party I was at, they'd ask me a question, I'd say, well, do you know about da-da-da-da-da? And they'd say no. And it's like, okay. So I went through this 5 different times and all these different things. And I said, well, there's a short version and there's a long version here. The short version will take 40 minutes. The long version will take 5 hours. Which one do you want? It's like, I want, okay, we'll do the 5 hour one. So, okay, well, it took 7 hours, and I just sat there and talked about this whole subject for 7 hours and ended up with about 20 people, like sitting there listening to what I was saying, because it was like this huge in-depth research about the whole thing about consciousness and awareness that happened way back then, that really was the foundation for just completely stepping away from the entire trip of chasing enlightenment. I didn't read a book on enlightenment or anything since 1976. I read the Tibetan Yoga and Secret Doctrines in 1985, and that was it. It's like, and then there's another book, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, which I read. You know, it's one of my little bliss books. I thought I'd read it. And in actual fact, I mean, there's the Zen Flesh, Zen Bones outside the window. I mean, there's a bird chirping just outside. I mean, there's the Zen. There's no need to read a book about it. It's like life supplies all the bliss and all the pain you can possibly imagine. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to actually use this unless you actually need to use it. And I've been a foreman on building sites. I've designed buildings for people. I've done all sorts of things, and it's been completely effortless. I designed a house for somebody in 30 minutes. Like on a steep slope, just talk to them, okay, what do you want? And I just kept drawing, and you know, in 30 minutes I gave them this plan. I said, is that what you're looking for? And they said, yeah, how did you do that? And it's purely allowing this vastness to come down into this little narrow focus that the scientist is looking at, and allowing all of that knowing of the vastness to actually filter in and actually just come into this light. The same as the stock market was the same thing. It was a bit like allowing the vastness to actually filter into this tiny little space called our human life. So really it gets down to what I was saying before, is this reference point. What's your reference point? My reference point is that space I found between 0 and 5 years old. I never left it. I had all this life thrown on me like being tar and feathered. But at the same time, inside it all, and I threw it all off in 1976, it's a bit like, it's almost like I just unzipped myself, and like a cicada, I don't know whether you have cicadas in California, but in Australia they're the loudest insect in the world. And what they do is they stay in the ground for 2 years and up to 18 years, and there's 4 different kinds. And when they actually come out of the ground, they climb up a tree and they grab hold of the branch, and then a crack opens up in the back of them, and they completely step out of where they've been buried in the ground all that time, and they go up into the tree. Kookaburras love eating them, yeah. But there's absolutely, in some places, there's millions of them, and they're the loudest insect in the world. And when you actually go out into the Australian bush and you sit in a million cicadas all sounding at the same time on a really hot summer's day, it's the most incredible meditation you'll ever come across. You're completely taken out of the mind, and you're completely embedded into the energy and the vortex that the earth is. That's the power of the Australian bush. The thing about what Australia has is space. It's got this vastness of space, which allows this amazing vastness of feeling, which isn't attributed to the mind at all. It's this feeling of just being itself. And this is what, when I was 20, I looked around and I thought, I had this near-death experience when I was 18, right? And I was underwater and I saw this whole amazing, almost like an acid trip happen for me. And it was a bit like, this voice came to me and said, listen, if you don't get out of there, you're not going to. And I realized that, oh, damn, I'm under the water here. So out I got, you know, and I sort of ended up, I didn't tell anybody about it for 20 years. When my sister died, I sort of wrote it all out, and I sent it to her about death and what death was and how amazing it was. But from when I was 18 to when I was 26, I went through this thing of, okay, well, if all this is there, you know, we're not this physical body, for sure. It's only a part of what we are. So I looked around and I saw all these people in ashrams and, you know, doing their meditation trips and all this sort of trip, and I thought, well, these people are onto something here. They're looking for something. They know something I don't know. So I thought, well, okay. And then fate would have it that I was walking up a hill in Hobart, and I heard this amazing singing. And I used to be in choirs when I was a kid, and I had a good voice, but you know, I thought about being a rock and roll star, and I thought, no, I don't want to do that either. So I wandered in. It was Satchinanda Ashram, and they were doing kirtan, doing spiritual singing. So I sat down and started singing and became a yoga teacher and started teaching 5 yoga and meditation classes a day and all this sort of stuff. And it was actually 1976. I realized that what all of these people were looking for, we already knew. I already knew from when I was 0 to 5 years old. What they were looking for is connection to this essence of energy, this vortex of energy that is us, which allows us to do crazy things like, shoot rifles and get, like 100.10 in 12 weeks, like time after time after time after time, and transform money from in the stock market effortlessly, and do all these other amazing things like blah, 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 that happen in life. Like the Hilton chain, for instance, getting manufactured by this guy who is completely connected through his intuitive flow, which is really this energy. It's like having a phone line to God. It's like, okay, what do we do here? So I realized in 1976, I was sitting in a dunny in the ashram, right, and had a wallboard off, and I was looking at these marigolds in the garden. And I was sitting there and just finished a meditation class, so I was pretty chilled. And I realized that there was something on the wall. I've forgotten what it said, but it said something like, life is watching a beanstalk grow. And the whole thing about what everybody was looking for, the whole enlightenment thing happened. And I laughed my head off. I laughed and I laughed and I laughed and laughed and laughed. And it was a bit like I didn't say anything to anybody and completely walked away from the whole spirit trip. I stopped teaching yoga, I stopped teaching meditation, and just went off into life. I just wandered off into life like Siddhartha going into business. So here I am. But we already know all of these things that we're looking for. It's already there. I mean, like, people say this all the time, If I go to your shanty, for instance, it's like the true meditation is just to stop, be silent, allow the silence. And what happens is you drop into your body, you drop into this energy, and you drop into this stillness, which is unbelievably almost a saturated solution of nothing at all. It's what you find when you're sitting in all those udders,
I like it, saturated nothingness.
It is.
It's double X, It's super nothingness. High proof.
You can use it. This is it. It's usable. It's usable through the human vehicle. It's like there is no wall between this and the saturated solution, because this is what this hand is made of. This is what this water is made of. So again, it gets back to this reference point. What's your reference point? Is your reference point to the idea that I'm a Richard? Is the reference point the idea that I'm a Sam? Yes, it is. But at the same time, that's the scientist looking down the microscope at the very, very small, the infinitesimal. But also realize, as the Richard having the idea that this is who and what I am, and this is the Sam having the idea of this is what and who I am, also feel the vastness that is available for us, because that really is the trick. Just allow life to be as it is without interpreting it, and you actually drop into this space.
I get that sense. I feel real, whatever my reference of Richard is, I would say it's pretty thin. Yeah, nothing really sticks to it much, and nothing puffs it up, and nothing really deflates it much.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like a thing that's here, It's just how it works.
That's also why the Sam and the Richard can connect, because we're in a similar place. There's not much of Sam here, like there's something to grab hold of. Okay, Sam is a solid thing. Yeah, Sam is this solid thing. Look, there he is. He's solid. Look. But this is only the manifestation of the energy field that is part of this human activity. It is part of us. This is why we're here, so as to explore all of this. We're the vastness and the microscope. It's paradoxical. The whole thing, from the linear perspective of the mind, does not make sense. And this is why people don't awaken. Because they're trying to do it with their mind and in a linear fashion, and it doesn't make sense because there's too many things that don't make sense. And they're all true. You can't do it from the mind. You have to realize the mind itself is just a tool along the way to use. The same as your sensory apparatus for feeling. It's like, it's just another tool. Same as your eyes are just another tool. Your thinking is just another tool. The thinking just happens to be the tool that actually brings together all what is seen and heard and felt and tasted. So we think, a lot of people think, that is what and who I am. And yes, from that particular reference point from the physical body, that is exactly what you are. There is no denying that. But realize that we are also this vast aspect that quantum physics talks about. We are that vastness of nothing itself exploring through the human aspect of what is. It's incredible. It's just amazing. It's the most amazing. You know, my son's getting into video games. You know, we're in the biggest video game of all, and they've got video games inside the video games. This is it. It's like, wow. So all this stuff's been rattling around in my head as experience since the 70s. And after 1976, I actually felt, you know, it's like, I better shut up because no one understood what I was saying and I didn't want to get locked up. True, that was really a very definite, wasn't, you could call it a fear, but a very definite inconvenience that I didn't really want to live at all. So it was a self-preservation thing, and just be normal, just drop into having a human life, doing ordinary things. But now the whole apparatus of the world is all of this stuff that happened to me in the 70s is now becoming the common, the generic. It's in the newspapers, it's on the TV, it's like it's on YouTube, it's everywhere. It's like, in a sense, it's, you know, there's been a lot of people who have had this experience over millennia, but they've always had a support group like an ashram or whatever to help them survive. And now we have Never Not Here to help us survive for a lot of people. It's great. Thank you, Richard. Yay!
Right. I won't let you guys down. I don't know. I'm taking off. Forget it.
It's all right, Richard.
No, I just feel it. You know, I mean, really, there's not a whole lot to say, right? I mean, I could, you and me are just transported into this openness, and you know, there's really no way to put any descriptors on it. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's marvelous or anything. It's just kind of like the lack of words.
Yeah. Some people have actually put words to it very well. And have nailed it. Like, you know, into, you know, step by step by step by step by step.
Yeah, sometimes I'm interested in that, but, you know, I don't think I'm the best to do it, so I think I better just stay quiet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So we do connect.
Right. The first question is answered, right? We do connect.
Yeah. But it's, in a sense, the only way to connect is this softening. It's this stepping away from the mind aspect and going into the heart aspect and going into the body aspect of what's actually here between us. And this is why, you know, people have their children shot in front of them. they then turn into loving, compassionate beings as well, because they realize that, what happened there really wasn't the best outcome. Not that it's outcome based. It's just like, in a sense, it's the intuitive coming through. But really, in a sense, I wouldn't call it a belief, but it's a knowing that the human race itself will ultimately do the right thing. Maybe I'm just an optimist, but it just feels to me like the heart aspect is very, very much in control of this planet, even though all of this other stuff is happening. And because the heart aspect's opening on this planet, all this other stuff's happening as well. That's trying to oppose it. So it's a bit like, it's like, the gods have created this little cricket game called Earth, and we've got the goodies and the baddies, and okay, let's see what happens if we toss them all together, and okay, right, great. Throw them through a couple of 10,000 year periods and see what they come up with. I have no idea. It's just like I look at everything and go, oh, okay.
Isn't it amazing? We're talking from different days. I mean, we're like the greatest friends, and here we are on different days and different time, millions of time zones away, or, more than halfway around the earth if I go the long way.
Yeah, true.
And
it's at 1:09 p.m. on Monday afternoon in Lismore, New South Wales. It's sunny and there's a little bit of cloud out there. There's lots of blue sky and the birds are happy and spring's happened, and
yeah, we got 10 to 11 here in Chicago. It was a gorgeous day, and it's gonna be a little cooler this week, but
and that also gets down to, what is life about? Life is about just being ordinary. This whole thing about finding some spiritual bliss and stuff, and yeah, sure, that happens along the way. But in actual fact, what happens here? What happens here is just actually coming back into, oh, my son, would you like a cup of tea? Like,
yeah, maybe that's our biggest contribution, is kind of like not adding any more spiritual beliefs, just saying the ones that are there, are they important?
Well, in the end, the whole enlightenment thing, when enlightenment happens, you dump absolutely every belief you ever had. If you're carrying any beliefs, it's not enlightenment. Enlightenment is stepping out of, completely away from everything you've ever known through the mind. You become experience itself. You become experience of the world itself, of this energy field that's there, this quiet, saturated solution of nothing.
I suppose that's why I asked the first question from the very beginning, that why can we really say anything to each other? Because we've heard that a million times, really. I mean, everybody's saying that, but yet we're trying to figure it out.
What's trying to figure it out? The Ramana question?
The reference, like you're saying, what's your reference point? The reference point is still grasping that there's that I'm understanding. Now I got it.
There's a choice of reference points here.
Yeah, right.
And really it gets down to the realization that you are all of these reference points. Sam is the mind concept, holding on to a separate identity. That's a possibility. I don't do it. But it comes up sometimes and it's like, oh, it's interesting. I haven't seen that one for 25 years. Oh, okay. So when things come up, it's like, things don't disappear. I mean, okay, I'm awakened, right? It's all happened. Enlightenment's happened. And then what happens in the awakening, post-awakening period is that there's residual stuff, energies that come through. It's like people go, oh, hang on a minute. I'm enlightened. That shouldn't be there. I should be peace, love, and happiness and all this. How can I be angry? How can I yell and rant and rave and all of that? It's a choice. It's like, but when it does come, it's like you we'll find that you become this awareness, having this experience through the human vehicle. It's really interesting. There's a when I was when was it? 1998. I was a tradesman, right? And I had my van. It was Friday afternoon. I drove into a service station, and I was there. I was tired as anything, right? Been working all day, 10 hours and stuff. I had the petrol thing in the Bowser in the nozzle, filling my car up, and it was a beat up old Toyota van. I didn't really care too much about it. This guy came racing in, screeched his tires, opened the door, banged his door against my car, and I just didn't really care. I was quite happy, okay, you banged your car against my door. I mean, so what? He was really upset about the fact that he banged this, and he was feeling really guilty, right? So he went, rah, 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 and I went, rah, 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 back, and I was like, rah, 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 rah. So, but all the time, in me, in the Sam, well, there was this witness sitting there in total space of peace and tranquility, feeling this amazing, oh wow, look at this, and watching the same Sam going to this guy. And anyway, I finished filling it up, and I said, oh, look after my car for me, will you? Don't let anybody bang it or anything. A total prick, Anyway, but it allowed this guy to save face, which is sort of something that was really important. Anyway, that all finished, paid, and I came back, and I just waved, got in the car and drove away. As I was driving away, this voice came to me in my head saying, oh, that was interesting. And then another voice came and said, yeah, it was, wasn't it? And at the same time, there was the Sam observer looking at this, realizing that there were two entity observers sort of commenting on this thing. And there was also the Sam who was sitting in the driver's seat. His heart was going, because it was like, man, I thought I was going to have to fight that guy, and I was ready to fight the guy if I needed to, but all the time there was this space, even though in the physical body the adrenaline was pumping and the whole trip, there was this total serenity happening at the same time, in the very same instant, there was this serenity happening, as well as the physical body was going through this.
That's a great modeling, and just to say that is just really, and really opens a possibility that, hey, I never even crossed my mind, we could say, I never even crossed my mind. I thought I had to act on all that feeling. And that's a beautiful opening.
So when things actually come up in post-awakening spaces where, it's like, well, I'm jealous because, my lover went off with somebody and,
what's he got that I don't got?
All that. It's like, yes, really all it is a residual aspect of the human allowing your education of that human experience to actually just be human experience. The awareness aspect can go, that's interesting. And I found that this word, and somebody picked me up on it once, I used to say, oh, that's interesting. And then somebody said to me, oh, who was the one that said it was interesting? And I'd already realized what Ramana was saying as well, where is the who? The who doesn't really exist. But it's still, I was at 15 to 18,000 feet in the Himalayas in 2007. And because between 15 and 18,000 feet, there's a lack of oxygen, like I didn't go over 18,500 feet. But I found that I really, I'd have to do Bastrika Pranayama to actually stay even, in physical health, so I could keep walking. But as soon as I did it more than 30 times, like both sides, and then with both nostrils, I'd physically leave my body. I would leave my body and I'd be sort of walking along the trail or sitting on a rock, and I'd be separated from my body. And this happened about 30 times in the day. And it was to the point where I was a bit like, come on, you Buddhas, just let me stay in my body, okay? Stop giving me crap, So It's like there's this thing of this realization that we are not this physical being. This physical being is just only part of what we are. So when it comes to stuff that happens, like jealousy or rage or, you know, even like if my son died, I'd cry. I mean, even just thinking about it, I cry. Hearing myself right now, I can feel that, it's like I would really miss him. It's like there is no way that you're not human. You are more human going through the enlightenment awakening process than your perspective becomes this vastness in which the human aspect of totality of what it is just a tiny little thing. So you can operate out of this. So when things come up, like jealousy or rage or, it's like, oh shit, I haven't got enough money. It's like, oh, what am I going to do? I can't pay the rent. It's like you don't have to get unhappy about the fact that you can't pay the rent. Your serenity of bliss of being doesn't stop just because you don't pay the rent. You can have an accident and yes, all care and look after everybody, and no, I'm not laughing at anybody. Although some people actually misinterpreted my space when I didn't get super upset about the fact that somebody just died in front of me. It was just like, okay, well, they've passed form. It's like, how can I help you? Like, what's happening for you? It's like it puts you really more in touch with human being. When you look at the words, human being. I mean, H-U is a sound that people use. Hugh, man. It's really saying it's a spiritual man. Being. Being is really not a noun, it's a verb. It's actually being here, now, right now, this instant. What's actually happening in my feeling life right now. I am being. I think about my son dying and it's like my being goes, oh, sadness. Tears roll down my heart. Even though I know that that's his trip. And in essence, it's like what happens for you tomorrow is your trip. And what happens for me is my trip. There is a me and a my here. But it's also relative to a reference point of the human heart that's actually evolving unto itself. But also knowing that this human heart and your human heart is the same human heart. And there's 7 billion of them on the planet. It's actually one heart, evolving. So yes, there is separation, but also yes, there's not. There's this unity that's happening. We have this indivisibility, as well as this what Jung called the individuation, where we are this collection of whatever's happening through each individual. So it's really allowing all of that to be where it is. I mean, the Tibetan Buddhist Padma Sampava is about the only thing I've ever really read on the Buddhist thing. It's like for some reason those books came to me in the 70s and I read them, and it's a bit like the important passage comes down to about 4 lines. And really it's just allow life to just be right where it is right now. Just be life as it is without interpretation. So if that's the case, what is the one allowing life as it is without interpretation? Without interpretation takes it out of the mind straight away. There is no mind there. There's no interpretation, there's no mind. So allowing life to be as it is, what allows life to be as it is? Awareness itself. If you go into a bit of quantum theory and quantum physics, it's like to realize that all there is awareness. All there is consciousness here. Nothing else. There is nothing else. There is just consciousness. Evolving unto itself. It's like that the self manifests through this human vehicle. So it's like you can't deny that there's a human vehicle here. That's just stupidity. That's like walking in the rain and saying, no, I'm not wet. Of course you're wet. But who's wet? The human body is wet. Awareness? Is awareness wet? Yes, it is. Through the human body. Through the reference point of the human body. So it's allowing the reference point of the human body to actually completely feel and be and know and love and hate, but knowing all the time that that's just a manifestation of what is actually here as an energy field that I just call life. Life is doing what it's doing. Life is just doing what it's doing. That's it. And in it, life will determine. Richard, I send Richard an email. Richard sends me an email back saying, "Oh, let's talk." So life opens the opportunities. Life gives you what you need. There's no need, in a sense. All I can ever do, really, in a sense, is surrender to life itself. And in that surrender is an allowance to, okay, my feeling life is saying yes to that. My feeling life is saying I don't want to go and shoot AK-47. My feeling life as a teenager was saying, no, I don't want to go off and be in the Olympics. My feeling life at the service station was quiet. My physical body life was sort of, man, whoa. It's really allowing which reference point do we take notice of, and you can take notice of all of them. Am I that what I'm seeing down through the microscope? What the scientist sees down through the microscope? Am I that tiniest little thing? Yes, I am. But I'm also the vastness that is allowing that seeing. I am God aspect allowing that seeing. I don't believe in God. I don't believe anything. I just am this now. That's it. And I don't even know what that is because I don't actually put too many words on it.
I just seem to have this incredible reluctance to add any words, because usually that's kind of like counter my normal or historical self. I'm like, I always got my 2 cents to throw in there. Yeah, how about this? Yeah, that, this, that, this. I think it's just beautiful, just sitting in this space and just hearing these beautiful words and really kind of being with them, and then seeing that, and then also feeling like, oh, I could say this or I could say that. But
can you feel?
Yeah.
Can you feel what I'm saying?
Yes, but definitely.
Well, that's it. That's all you need. You don't need anything else.
I definitely feel that spaciousness. It's just
it's
a completeness. It's like a completeness, just what you're saying is, perfect or not perfect, but I mean, certainly what I would add on to it certainly would not have any it wouldn't really add anything. And so I just kind of allowed myself to dry up a little bit there and just enjoy.
It really gets down for me when I look at life, for me, is just purely evidence-based. That's it. What is actually here? If I'm using my mind, I can come up with lots of ideas, and I know when they're ideas that are generated by my mind. I can also be here in pure intuitive flow and realize and know that this is where the information is coming from. It's from this intuitive flow. Being in this vastness, you actually don't need to carry anything. You don't need to hang on to anything anymore, ever. There's nothing you need to hang on to. There's no knowledge you have to hang on to because you have complete access to everything that's there at any time.
That's a great trust.
Built
on an experience. Just it works.
It's not even trust. It's just evidence-based, and it purely comes from decades of just allowing life to be as it is without interpreting it. Just completely see it for what it is. Now, in my life, it's sort of put me in this situation where I don't say anything. I just shut up because there's a reluctance here to actually put any words on anything that is actually seen, because it actually creates what is seen in a different form. It's like in quantum physics, the observer creates the observed purely by interaction. So that's an interesting one. But if you're going to intercept life in such a way that love is there, that it can actually work, and stuff will come up. And if any sand stuff, residual stuff from yesterday patterning of life comes up, then feel it, know it, love it, allow it to be there. Don't do anything with it. Just see it and let it go. And that's all. It's all Padmasambhava says. That's all what Dzogchen, the highest teachings of Dzogchen, say the same thing. That's also the highest teachings of Zen. They say the same thing. Whatever is. Just let it, feel it, be it, let it go. You don't have to do anything.
I don't do that.
You don't have to do it.
No, I don't do that. Yeah, because somehow if there's no movies running there, well, I talked to some guys today, for a long time. So then I let that die. But anyhow, and we talked the other night, so I let that die. But I tend to like to make a record.
But that's all right. Then you're in a different life. I'm in a life where there's very little I need to do. I'm in quiet mode for a lot of what I do in life. And I have been I've been living on a piece of land for the last 6 years, 7 years now, by myself. And, I get the occasional visitor, but, So I've been in nature completely, all the time. So I've been back in that space of 0 to 5 years old, and connecting that space back into, which in essence never left, but also realizing, okay, what's the extent, what's actually happening out in the world now, because there were a lot of visions I saw when I was 8 years old, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, in 100 years. But these have all happened now. It's all happened in less than 40 years. Like things that happened like 15, 20 years ago, I thought would take 100 years to happen. When I was 8 years old, I saw all this stuff and I thought, oh wow. So really things are accelerating really quickly. This is what's happening. It also allows you, being in this vastness space, to actually pick up what's about to happen. But that's, in a sense, I've done some psychic readings for people, but I avoid doing that completely, because I did one psychic reading and then I had to use the phone, and I couldn't work out I couldn't even work out how to pick the phone up. I was so far into the intuitive right brain aspect of being completely in tune with what was happening there, that I couldn't do anything. I was useless. Which is really interesting. It's like, there's Balti Taylor, the YouTube video about this lady, this neuroscientist had the brain hemorrhage.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That's brilliant. It really shows what the brain does. And it's like, and I thought, well, the psychic aspect, really for me, it's to balance both aspects of, have the vastness, which is the right brain, but also have the left brain, which is this sort of compactness. It's like this linear thing of, this, oh yes, okay, one foot in front of the other, is to actually bring these two together, which are, in a sense, as an architect, for instance, would have the vision, but also the vastness of the vision, to then bring it down into nuts and bolts and steel and concrete. That, in essence, is our job as a human being, is to actually allow the vastness, but to bring it into the world. And bring it into the world as
well. Maybe we can create a project. Who knows? Because that's what I want to do. And I'm doing it just with internet and movies. With videos. So bringing things in, but maybe they're not that clear. And that's what was my question in the beginning. Do we really get each other? But somehow maybe there's a way to do it. We're doing it now. I'm sure we're creating some kind of a space and some kind of a resonance that a lot of people are getting. So
yeah, the whole creative process itself of the artist is really, in a sense, they're the conduit for allowing through their intuition greater deeds which can actually help humanity. I mean, sure, artistic creativity can be totally hedonistic and sort of like, looking through the wrong end of a microscope. But it can also be this vastness sort of coming through. Look at Blake's work, for instance. I mean, sure, he was wrapped up in God and all the rest of it, but, and Michelangelo and Da Vinci and, these guys had this vastness available to them. And they had the skill and they brought it down and they actually grounded it into the earth, into form. It's like the vastness is the formless and the form is like somebody actually designed that, didn't they?
They sure did. More than that, they actually produced it. They made the tool and they
right.
made it happen.
So this is the same. It's using that vastness and bringing it into form. Some people do it in words. You're doing it with Never Not Here. So here we are.
Let's do it often. What fun.
Thank you, Richard. It's wonderful.
Thanks so much, Sam. Sam Noel Pearce.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for staying with us, and we get talking, so there it goes. And tell us what you think, and give us some ideas what you want to see, and we're here to make it happen to the best of our ability. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard.